you don't realize that the song you're going to find out is something else entirely. And I think that's why it's kind of the muse. It's like, no, you think you're going to write this song, but then the muse is going to show up and you're going to write something else. But if you're willing to let go, if you're willing to let it be a discovery, an inspirational discovery, that song has the potential to be something that you didn't even know was inside of you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a funny thing, inspiration. You know, I've never really kind of thought about it this way, but you can limit your own inspiration by trying to control it too much.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte, identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles so that you can claim your own path and make your life a work of art.
Recording in progress. At least so says the old Zoom lady after I hit the button. That's a new one. Is this the intro we want? Screw it. We're doing it. We'll do it live, Brandon. We'll do it live.
We're doing it. We're in it.
Welcome, everybody, to Way of the Artist podcast. It's good to have you with us once again. Or if this is your first time, welcome. Welcome for your first adventure and foray into these conversations that Brandon and I get into. And today we got one, like we got a few things that, you know, that we're going to get into, that we kind of know that we're going to get into. But I think that there's some territory here that we just sort of scratched the surface of in coming into this one that I'm excited to like dive into. So in this episode, we're talking about inspiration in the unexpected. And there's a lot of personal stuff that kind of fueled this one, just some personal observations, you know, for myself and for you, Brandon. And I'm just gonna hand it over to you because I'm excited. I feel like kind of like a kid in a candy store with this conversation because there's so many places that I'm excited to go into with this. So, you know, what would you like to start things out with?
Something I guess I'll add to start off is inspiration doesn't always come the way that you want it to, or the way you think it should, or the way you hope it might. And this is something that I'm learning often the hard way. You know, it's so funny, man. It's like you want to create some great art. You have these things to express. And it's like, well, where do those things come from? You know, do they always come from this lovely, you know, walk in the garden kind of like glorious moment you have? Yeah, sometimes, but not always. Yeah. Sometimes they come from this like, you know, trench that you push through or something like that. And sometimes you need both. And sometimes there's something in that kind of, if you want to use this weird analogy, trench, like maybe that's where sometimes the gold is, right? And if you're truly being an artist and you're truly after not just an artist trying to create great art, but like a person trying to live great life, sometimes you need to look in a place that doesn't seem so obvious and you wouldn't know to look there. So in some ways you have to end up your way through it. That's where you find inspiration, and almost the inspiration might be even what gets you out of it. And it's kind of a mess that way. It's this weird thing, you know. I talked about this on many podcasts before, but I mentioned it on the podcast we did last about this script I wrote called Love Lost. And it's been kind of an interesting script because it really did open up some doors for me. We'll see where they go, but it did open up doors. And what's interesting though is that it didn't come from a beautiful, like it came from a beautiful place. It didn't come from a place that I would have called beautiful. It came from heartbreak. It came from hurt. It came from loneliness. It came from the dark ditch of something. But it's like And I think I mentioned this one time before, but it's kind of like finding that flower in the apocalypse. It's like weird how you can have just something horrible all around you almost, and yet you can focus on the one thing that's beautiful. And that one thing of beauty becomes somehow the entire world to you. And sometimes I feel like a script is like that. It's like you find this little speck of beauty in a total like world of shit. It's like, or it can be the opposite. I think sometimes you can be in this world of beauty and you can find this one thing that's horrible. Like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes dystopian movies are like that, where someone goes, "Oh, isn't this glorious? Isn't this wonderful? This Eden, this amazing thing." And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but look at this dark underbelly. And then that dark underbelly becomes almost the story, right? And
Yeah.
anyway, I just think these things, they don't always come the way you think they should come. They don't come the way you want them to. So anyway, I'm interested in kind of getting into that. I don't know. I think these last whole series of conversations we had, I have no idea where they're going to go when we start. This is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that I'm just gonna jump off of kind of where you've left it, which was kind of a turn of phrase on the title of this episode that we kind of stumbled into right before we started recording. And so this is maybe some of the most unexplored territory of this conversation, at least between you and I, that I'm really interested in getting into. So, I mean, we called this one, inspiration in the unexpected. But we also potentially thought about calling this one, or at least I did, potentially calling this one "Inspiration is the Unexpected." And there's something about that notion which, just sort of on the sort of preliminary sort of contemplating that idea, contemplating that notion, it opens up a bit of a philosophical can of worms, but it does seem fairly logical to me that that's kind of just a statement of truth, that inspiration is the unexpected. Because we even like the words that we use in our language are phrases. We say like, we're looking for inspiration. We're trying to find inspiration. It's one of the questions that we ask our guests when they come onto the show, like where or how do they find inspiration, right? And that implies, it's implicit in sort of those statements of where do you find it, how do you find it, searching for it, that it's something that we don't know. It's something that we're not entirely sure what it is that we're looking for. Inspiration is really almost more of a feeling than anything. Like there's usually a piece of an idea that's there. There's a possibility, there's an idea that it comes with, but inspiration is more than just an idea. There's a whole wave of energy and emotion that we get swept up in with it. And so it has to be unexpected. Inspiration has to be unexpected at some level. It has to be something that we're not entirely sure what it is that we're looking for. Only that we sort of know it when we come across it,
Yeah.
It's like, I'll know it when it's here, right? I just will. And I've had experiences like that I can reflect upon and acknowledge that those situations have occurred. So I think that that's a really interesting side to this whole thing, because truly, if like it's an impossibility, logically speaking, it's impossible for inspiration to come from something expected, because then we would already know it to a certain extent. It's like then it would already be there. So there's this whole thing of kind of diving out into the unknown that goes along with inspiration.
There's something that I've learned a bit as a writer in kind of late in the game, I feel, for me. And And I mean, I think like there's a lot of professional writers, like people who are really, you know, can name names, but who cares? Like people that like make shows and movies and stuff that you'd see on TV, like, you know, some of the bigger boys, right? Like bigger boys and girls who do this stuff. By boys, I meant all inclusive, but I said boys. Anyway,
We can forgive the phrase of, you know, our time and generation, Brandon. At least I'll forgive you for it.
We're in a time where, you know, people sometimes care too much about this stuff, but whatever, you get what I'm saying? Like, you know, we're children, right? Creating ideas. It doesn't matter you're an adult or not. But my point is this: something that I found that like really like the professional writers do, and just like very well trained and well mentored writers do, is that they have this practice of painting their characters into a corner, and they put them into a corner that they don't know how they'll get out of. They don't have an answer for it, but they go like, let me put them into this situation. And it's impossible. Like I don't even understand how they would get out of it. It's absolutely impossible. And I probably won't figure it out. Kind of, that's what you think when you start. And you know what? You might actually find out that you just are not able to figure a way out. Like, and so you have to try something else because it just really is too much of a corner. But part of what has helped me to start to write better for stories is to put my characters into an impossible place and really understand that concept, because in that impossible place is where you find inspiration. It's a place where you have to be creative, you have to try. And something I noticed when I was younger, this resonated with me, because something I noticed when I was younger was that if I acted before I thought, I often had to be extremely creative and inspired to figure it out. And I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. I laugh because it's like a young guy trying to talk to women. It's just like, paint yourself into a corner, man. You know, it's like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. And you have all these ideas of like what might happen, and you just have no context because you've never really done it. And you only have so many experiences, or you have none at all. And you go in and you try to have a conversation with a perfect stranger, and you just try. And it's all of a sudden, when it works, it literally feels like you're flying by the seat of your pants, because you're like, I have no idea what's going to happen. And if you get a little bit of confidence, particularly in that type of situation, it inspires ideas. Like when you start to trust yourself, and by what I say by confidence, I mean, you trust your foot in your mouth that you're going to figure a way out of it, you know, like, and I feel like inspiration happens that way. It's like, you have to be willing to like make mistakes and fumble through it and fail upwards. And all of a sudden you're like, I think I'm being an idiot. I think I'm saying dumb stuff, but this person is playing with me. They're working with me. And actually they're like, oh, you know, they might say something like when they talk about maybe a moment you had with them, and they're like, oh, you know, you seem so confident. You seem like you knew what you're doing, and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I had no idea what I was doing. All I was doing was trying. And I feel like inspiration is kind of like that. Like it's like going in with a plan sometimes is the worst thing you can do at all. Just, you know, you got to go in with like, and you know, this from acting is the same way, you know, it's like, you got to let go of the plan. You got to let go of all the stuff. And I think to go back to my original point, the writing, right? The painting yourself into a corner. The reason why that's such an effective strategy is because if you actually paint your characters into a corner that you do not know how they will get out of, that makes you fly by the seat of your pants, and it makes you like, it's inspiration or die. And
yeah,
you know, you kind of like have to. And I don't think it comes from an obligated place, though. It comes from a sink or swim thing. And the swimming is more fun than the sinking. So you try to swim. And like I said, with the approaching somebody, even, you know, even just talking to somebody that you feel intimidated by, maybe they're someone you look up to, it doesn't really matter, but that I want to see if I can hang out here. You know, I feel like that's a way to inspire inspiration in and of itself. It's like, I just want to try. I want to see if I can exist in this arena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that's one of the things with inspiration is that like there's like it is unexpected, but there is sort of it doesn't mean that we are sort of completely what's the word that I'm looking for, Brandon? Passive, that we're completely sort of helpless in the whole situation. You know, it's like we're not sort of left up to the fates of whether it will or will not. You know, like there's like one of the people we talk about a lot, like Stephen Pressfield, who wrote the book the War of Art. You know, says something like, you know, I don't know, you know, how the muse shows up for me, but you know, I know that the muse shows up, you know, sometime between, you know, this time and this time in the afternoon, which is basically the time that he sits down to do his work. Like basically just through the showing up, is when inspiration kind of comes through. We can substitute, I think, muse and inspiration as, you know, pretty much one and the same thing. But I think that that's part, there's a way that we can sort of set up the conditions for inspiration to appear for us, right? Like it's not, like we kind of do what we can to show up, but then there's a certain level to which it's like, all right, now you've just got to pay attention. You know, as with so many things that we talk about on the show, you know, attention is magic and you create the conditions for it. And maybe, you know, for Stephen Pressfield, it's all right, I'm sitting down at my desk, which, you know, he sets up in a very particular way. It's his whole workspace is very specific to him. You know, that's part of how he creates those conditions. You know, and for other people and it can be many different things for whatever the time calls, right? Like I know for myself, sometimes going for a walk, right? Like just getting out into some nature is a huge source of inspiration. But the thing is that when I go out for that walk, it's like, I don't know what it is that's going to inspire me. You know, like I know that it's going to be nature, but that's a pretty ambiguous thing. You know, I actually don't know what that thing is. I'm going out because that's all I can do. But while I'm out, suddenly there's this huge maple tree or something that I've never seen before. That's just like reaching out over a cliff, or there's like a couple of butterflies just like twirling around each other in the air. There's a smell, there's a sound, there's a something that I see or hear or smell or whatever it is, like that it hits me in a way that it's never quite hit me before. You know what I mean? Like it's like, yes, I've seen and heard and, you know, all of these things before, technically speaking, but maybe never quite like this. Maybe never quite with this level of attention and care, you know, but I don't know what that thing is. I can't go out there and say, all right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find that maple tree and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to look at that maple tree and I'm going to get inspired. It's just like, no, it kind of happens by accident. Even if I've maybe passed this tree 100 times before, right? But there's a level to which a part of me is allowed to sort of drop away, you know, kind of like the chatter of my mind isn't quite so loud. And suddenly it's like taking something in for the first time. And there's inspiration there of some kind. And maybe you don't know exactly what that thing is, you know, but there's something inspiring about it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like inspiration can hit, but not always have a place to go. You know, like you can get inspired and it's like, but you have no place to put it, no use for it, you know, but it can still happen. I think that I think that's why I think it's kind of important to have something that, I don't know, like I, I think it's important to have a desire, like a direction, like something that you want. And um, with that direction, inspiration can kind of add to it. It can give you an idea. Like a lot of the time for me with inspiration, it's a little bit of a vision. It's like it comes up as a feeling, or it comes up as like a thought, or it comes up as an insight. It's like I think if you're not I think if you don't want anything, like if you have no direction to put your energy, inspiration is just kind of this fleeting, like happenstance thing. And I think it's nice when it happens, but I don't think it really does anything like other than be nice in the moment. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think that um, there, like, when you're walking around and like say you want something, or say you want something to be different, or maybe you don't even know what you want, maybe you just know what you don't want. Inspiration can give you clarification. It can give you something to help you see it in a new way. You know, it's like, but if you don't have anything, like if you're too passive in life, inspiration is kind of lost. It's like a miss on you. You know what I mean? Like, and I think there's something to say about being able to be momentarily like without desire, and momentarily in a place of just peace. But I think like the artist, and maybe this is just me, but I think that there needs to be a certain sense of like there's something burning, like there's something that's pressing, there's something that's necessary, and if you don't have kind of that necessary thing, inspiration just kind of becomes this very fleeting kind of thing, um, but if you have something like a fire to put out or a fire to light, like something, it's like that inspiration is like, it gives you kindling, it gives you whatever, it gives you something, to work with.
Yeah, just it's an interesting sort of relationship, because there is that sense of something, that is vital, and it's life-giving. And you don't even necessarily have to know what that thing is. And in fact, that can be one of the most exciting positions to be in. It's just like, I know there's something that I want to do. There's some direction that I want to go. And I don't know what that thing is, but I'm paying attention. I'm looking for it. And it's a funny thing, because you're both seeking it while at the same time having to completely let go of what that thing might be, so that it can actually show itself to you, but there's still an essential element of seeking.
Yeah.
Of that passionate sort of an impassioned looking, where I'm just like, what is it? Where is it? I don't know. Right. And in that space, there's, all sorts of possibilities can present themselves, and we can find, and we can end up finding inspiration in ways that we didn't expect, and in ways that we didn't even know were maybe even necessary. It might be something, I guess that fits the whole kind of description of the unexpected, right? But like, it can be really, really unexpected. Like, I was sharing with you, Brandon, before we started recording, something that was going on. Or like, I do, these sort of info sessions where I talk to mostly actors and some people who are just kind of curious about acting or interested in taking classes to learn about, expression, people looking to learn how to express more and better and all that good stuff. And I was having this conversation with somebody who was attended one of these, and they were asking me, they asked me a question. It's like, well, what would you say are the three main things that, that people get out of this class, right? And I thought about it, and I gave it as thoughtful response and answer that I had at that moment, right? But there was something about it where I won't lie, I was left a little bit unsatisfied by what my response was. Not that it was untrue, because everything that I said was true, but it opened something up. That question to me that I didn't expect opened something up, and it sort of was working in the back of my mind for a couple of days. And suddenly there was this new insight that happened when I was sitting down journaling, basically doing my journaling, which, if you're a creative and you're an artist, I think for anybody, just like a little bit of journaling, as much as you can do it, if not daily, like try and get it, a couple of times a week. But suddenly there was this thing, it kind of came up, and it was like, it was suddenly ready to go. It was like something was put in the oven, and suddenly it was just like, take it out of the oven, it's ready, it's cooked. And there was this new insight that I had into my work, into what I was doing with people, what I was teaching in the class, really like a stronger sense of like, yeah, really, really where I was wanting to go with everybody and what it was truly all about for me. And that was something that was completely unexpected. One of these things where it was like, it's like, I thought that like, oh yeah, I know what this is all about. I know what this thing is that I'm teaching and what people are coming to me for and whatever. And then kind of out of nowhere being sort of asked to articulate something, and to kind of really distill it down into sort of 3 points. And it ended up not being like, what I ended up coming away with wasn't 3 points, but it was one really strong one, which lent me such incredible insight. And it it really reignited something for me. Like, it really ignited a greater sense of what I was doing, how I want to teach, how I want to engage with, my students. There was this whole world of possibility suddenly that opened up, a new way that I felt like I can now speak to anyone who I work with, like a new level that I can engage with people. And there's something so exciting about that, but it came from nowhere. Like it truly was unexpected. Like it wasn't even something that I was even looking at or looking for. But sometimes these things happen where it's like, geez, you asked me this question and I answered it, but there's more to this. There's more to this, and I don't know what that thing is, but I'm going to keep looking at that thing. I'm going to keep looking at it. And one of the amazing things about sort of the human experience and about inspiration is how it happens so suddenly. But there was something that was working in the background for over a period of time, right? And then suddenly it's just there. And I think that's one of that's such a remarkable thing about the sort of the I guess the inspiration experience.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think to kind of look at your scenario, right? Like obviously what you're doing, you're teaching and your business and all that, you're figuring it out because it's something that's meaningful to you. And, I think when we do a business or we do a project or we do something creative, it might just be like, oh, I want to write a script, or I want to make a movie, or I want to get into acting. I don't know, paint a picture. But you kind of like have this thing that you want to do, right? Like this, and the level of depth is something that inspiration can unlock and reveal. And, it's interesting because I think this is kind of part of the maturity that comes with like doing something. You start off in a somewhat like almost, I don't want to say it's not the right way. Like you don't necessarily start from a superficial way, but your understanding of what you're trying to do is somewhat superficial. Like for me, to kind of give this context, like my whole business started with just teaching people how to make films. And it was really just a frustration. And my frustration came from I would get together with a lot of people and they'd be like, let's write a movie. Let's talk about making a movie together. And I'd get together with people and it would be talk, 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 and they wouldn't do it. And meanwhile, I was going off and I was making some stuff, but I had so many meetings and things I had about people talking about something they wanted to make or whatever. And I had this like kind of annoyance with that, but also this like kind of compassion too of like, it's just like people just don't know how to do it and they get overwhelmed. And so I was like, I think I can help people with that. This whole thing has evolved so far beyond making a movie. Making a movie is almost a side thought now, because what I started to realize was it wasn't really about making a movie. Like when the inspirations started to come in and I started to work with people and understand certain things, not just about them, but about myself, I started to realize like, I don't care if they make a movie or paint a picture or start a business. What I want them to have is I want them to take something like authentic, some type of vision inside of themselves and like this imagination. And I want them to see that they could make that a reality, because that was the experience I got through filmmaking. And I started to realize that, oh, if I would have never known about filmmaking, if someone would have given me some other medium, I think I had like a kind of a weird kind of a desire to take my imagination and somehow try to make it into reality. Like I've always kind of had this weird kind of desire to take these dreams and ideas and things and try to make them real. And it's I've tried it in various ways, but one of our friends, I've been making music with him recently, and it's the same thing. It's an authentic vision. It's like I have this sound inside of me and I want to try to get it out through the equipment. And so like, we've been playing around with it and I'm like, oh, isn't that cool? I can, and so a lot of what I started to realize what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get people to have a connection to this thing inside of themselves that they can bring out to the world. Now, you could have told me that when I started, but that took time. That took like to me, it isn't really just about making a film, although I think making a film is an awesome thing. And I honestly think everybody should do it because I think it's incredibly fun. But what more than that, what I would really love people to do, and this is what I would truly love every human being to do in the world, is I hope that everybody at some point in their life could take something that's inside of them and in some way express that in the world, like literally try to make it real, whether it's through painting or music or through filmmaking or through screenwriting or novel writing or whatever. Just like try to take something inside of you that's really you and make that real. And to me, that also creates a whole new inspiration, because when I'm working with a new client, I'm just looking at them going like, what's inside of you? Like once we figure that out, because you probably don't even know yet, but like I work with people every week. And this is the thing that I find so fascinating is when they tap into this and they kind of start to see like, oh, I have this thing inside of me. And I'm like, to me, this is what life is about. I could be wrong. I don't know, but it's inspiring to me. It's a discovery. And I never know. Every client that steps in front of me, like I've had clients go like, oh, I'm going to make this horror movie or I'm going to do this thing. And it's totally not what ends up happening by the end of it. Not because they couldn't make that, but like, I got to share a story. Like one of my clients, she started with this like thriller movie, and it was supposed to be like, it was very like, it was cool. It was a neat idea, somewhat kind of common, I suppose, in some ways. It's like a thriller. It's somewhat surfacey. But then as we worked together, it turned into this really like powerful like love story. And she found a really unique way to like tell this story, and it won all sorts of awards and all sorts of stuff. And the awards almost don't even matter, but she got awarded because when she actually got to like what was inside of her, it was so special because it was so unique to her that people saw something they never saw in cinema. They saw something that they'd never really had. And to me, inspiration like is like that. You come in thinking you're going to do this one thing, and you come out doing a whole other thing. And by letting go of what you thought you were there to do, you open yourself up to the potential of doing something that you never knew was inside of you. But to go circle around, and I talked a lot, but she wanted to make a film. And I think this is kind of the thing I'm stuck on, Evan, is you got to want something, or you got to want to get away from something. I really feel like that's a key component, because if she had nowhere to put that energy, I don't think anything would have happened. But she wanted to do something, like she wanted to make a film, or she wanted to create something. And I think that's what we all need. We need somewhere to either put it or something to get away from. And if we have one of those two things, that inspiration has somewhere to go, some use,
Yeah, there's some sort of impulse that is still there, because I think that there's a relationship that's going on there, sort of between, which I think is maybe why inspiration has been referred to as like a muse, is very often cited as like some sort of an entity that comes and visits you and stuff, because there is something that feels very relational about the whole thing. It's just like, it's a 50-50 relationship. It's just like inspiration is there, but you've got to meet me halfway.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you got to meet it halfway. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Hell, maybe it might not even be halfway, but you need to show up somewhat. You need to show your willingness. You need to show your desire. You need to show something. You need to show up on some level, I guess, to put it in a different way. You need to show up on some level. And when you show up on some level, then inspiration starts to show up on some level in all kinds of really kind of bizarre ways. I want to go, because you mentioned music. I think music is such a wonderful place to talk about inspiration, because I know it's something that like you're a music lover, Brandon. You're a music lover, and I know that you've had instruments in your house, which may collect some dust, but that's okay. You're in good company, amongst that. But you've been sharing with me sort of this new exploration that you've been going on with learning how to make like music digitally with like sort of a digital platform, and for myself, I've been playing guitar and messing around with music for some time now, and there's something about when you're starting to make a song or a riff or something, sometimes you have an idea in your head. Sometimes you have, and some people, there are musicians out there who they can actually hear what they want in their minds. But I would say that for the majority of people in music and musicians, there's still a large degree of, I don't know what exactly. You might have a certain idea of like, I kind of want it to be like this.
Yeah.
I kind of want it to be a sound that, and you kind of start to have to speak almost poetically and metaphorically, about it at a certain point, at least for myself in music, and for a lot of other people who I know in music. Like, It's like, I don't know, I want it to be like, it's like, I want it to like hit you like, like a wave, but then it just drops down, like you sometimes that language enters into the equation. But I know that for another way that inspiration happens for myself when it comes to something like music, and what's so beautiful about music is that sometimes I'm just kind of noodling around on my guitar, and maybe it's my acoustic, or I'm playing on my electric, and so I'm doing stuff. I'm tweaking like the different settings on the amp and getting different sounds out of it. And then there's a sound. Like that's exactly what happens. It's like, oh, what was that? What was that sound that just happened right now? And that sound, that tone pulls something out of you, and it's why so many musicians and producers, they end up getting all of these different instruments and pieces of equipment that they have to work with, because it makes, like, just speaking purely as a guitar player, I play differently. Like I have different things that I can run through my amp, different ways that I can change the settings, pedals, like different effects pedals that I run through it, that when I engage them, when I turn them on, it does something and it makes me play in a different way. In a way that I've maybe never quite played before. And you go, what the hell is this? There's something there, and there's something that you don't quite know how to touch it, but it's there. It's real, and it's immediate, and it's extraordinary, right? And then that just kind of pushes you along. You explore that sound until it leads to this thing. It's like, oh, okay, I've got some chords to play with this, or I've got a little riff to play with this. And then, oh, I'm going to put this in there, as a little bass line, and I'm going to put like a little sort of drum like this in behind it. And now I'm going to solo on top of that thing. And now that's kind of taken on a life and quality that's very fascinating and interesting to me, that I don't quite know where it will lead. But that's all kind of playing on inspiration. And that's kind of why I wanted to touch on the music, is because that's kind of exactly what we're talking about. Is sometimes you don't know exactly what it is. Sometimes it's something that sneaks up on you and you go like, what was that?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, working with the digital sound that I've been playing with, I don't know, like my background in music is pretty limited for the most part. I mean, so a lot of the time when I'm playing with sounds, like you can do so many variations on some sounds, just like all of them you can do a lot, but like some of them just so much that can happen. The rhythm, the tone, the depth, this the reverb, all this stuff, right? And what's interesting is like I'm kind of finding sounds and I don't even know what I'll do. So I'm playing with the dials and just going around, and then I stumble across something. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Okay. Something that I found that has kind of worked in my benefit is that because I don't really have a good education or grasp of music theory, there's a certain math to music, right? And it's like kind of like film. Like there's at least this is how I understand it, or storytelling. There's like there's a rhythm, there's a kind of a math to it. Like, if you have a bass line, it has a beat that kind of goes in a certain rhythm, right? And so something that was kind of working out for me in kind of a weird experimental way was I wasn't following the math, but what end of theory you wouldn't be able to do. And it was totally accidental. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't say that I had a vision and an idea of what I was going to create necessarily, like I knew what it was going to be. But what I could say that I knew was I was like in search of a feeling. I was like in search of and that feeling, that thing I was in search of was changing as I was discovering. So it's like, maybe this sounds really kind of like surfacey and whatever, but it's like, say I wanted to make something happy feeling and dancey feeling, right? That was where I went into it. So I'm trying to find something that's like a little more upbeat, a little more easy, a little more friendly. But then I might stumble across something and it's maybe a little bit more of a heavier dramatic tone. And I have the ability to at least recognize that. I can recognize the sound that's going on there. And then what ends up happening is I go, okay, well, I came into this wanting dancey happy, but now there's an emotional underline I'm finding in it. So I'm going to throw that in, but I'm still kind of looking for the dancey part. But maybe it's not happiness, is kind of like maybe my idea of happiness is evolving, you know? And so inspiration, I find, is a little bit like that. It's like you go in with kind of an idea of what you want, but you need to be open enough because if you discover something incredible while you're on your journey, you need to be willing to let go of what you thought it was supposed to be because it might be something better if you're willing to let go of that. You know, it's like I go back to that client, you know, who made the multi-award winning film. If she didn't abandon her thriller idea and let it become a love story, she would have missed out on something like telling us you're in a situation where you got to tell a thriller and that's what you're hired to do and that's the job. But like from a purely creative point, sometimes, you know, you got to be like, hey, there's no balance here, you know, and you might think you want to write a certain type of song and you don't realize that the song you're going to find out is something else entirely. And I think that's why it's kind of the muse. It's like, no, you think you're going to write this song, but then the muse is going to show up and you're going to write something else. But if you're willing to let go, if you're willing to let it be a discovery, an inspirational discovery, that song has the potential to be something that you didn't even know was inside of you, you know? So it's a funny thing, inspiration. You know, I've never really kind of thought about it this way, but you can limit your own inspiration by trying to control it too much.
Oh yeah. I think, and you can even kill it dead.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, like you can run that right into the ground. You know, something that, in what you just said, it reminds me of, something that, my old acting teacher, Larry Silverberg, said to us, which was, you know, your partner will take you to places you never even imagined. You know, so and it was this it was this lesson for us as actors. Like, don't get caught up in your own ideas of this scene and what you think is supposed to go on and how you want it to happen and whatever. It's like, look, do your work, show up and pay attention. Show up and pay attention to what your partner is doing, right? And then they do the same thing with you. And suddenly there's like, holy shit, there's all of this life. And, you know, your partner does something that you had no idea they were going to do, or you pick up on like a little way that they just said something to you. And suddenly it's just burning a hole inside of you. And now that's given you sort of this, you know, your performance, this life. And now they're picking up on that thing. And then like, you know, it's just like this escalation where you're just riding this wave of inspiration in each other. Right. And it's totally wild. But I think that we can, you know, that's like kind of, and that can totally happen where, you know, in a good partnership with another person, you're just bouncing things back. You know, this podcast is an example of that. You know, it's like you say something, I say something, and we're just bouncing off the like an inspiration of an idea to go and chase and pursue and see what's there. But I think that even in sort of a relationship with, you know, inspiration itself, you know, it will take you to places you didn't even imagine were possible, you know, and in that sense, we have to get out of the way. We have to get ourselves through the door, you know, which is, it's funny. A lot of acting stuff is coming up in this, for me, in this conversation, just because it's something I'm so familiar with. But, you know, like there's this whole thing in acting where that we call like, you know, the moment before, or, you know, emotional preparation, where essentially as an actor, you know, before you walk out, onto the stage or, you know, or onto where you're filming, onto the set, you have like a sort of a preparation that's there to help you have a rich emotional life as you step on. So you have something going on. Just to give people out there who aren't necessarily familiar with acting, it's like that's one of sort of the tools of the trade. It's like you got to come in with something hot. You got to come in with some sort of emotion. It doesn't mean you come in like a raging crazy person and it has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in the scene, but it means you come in with a full emotional life to start things off, because that's
life began before the scene started.
Exactly.
Life was already going on before the scene started. That's kind of the idea.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And just as we're always in the middle of something. We always have some emotional life that's going on with us at any given moment. So we have to come in with that. But one of the stipulations of that whole thing, which is one of the big challenges for the actors, because you get yourself to that emotional place and you walk out on set and now you got to forget about it. Like that emotional preparation you do is just to get you through the door. Like that's how it's always been taught to me. It's like, it's just there to get you through the door. You don't hold on to it. You can't hold on to it, because if you're holding on to it, then you're not paying attention anymore. You've got to now be in the living reality of what's going on in that scene and what's going on with the people around you and what they're doing and how you're responding to that, right? But if you're hanging on to it, you're not open and receptive to that whole thing. And so this whole thing, again, like this to parallel this back to this conversation, it's just like, look, there's a certain degree to which that seeking that we have to get ourselves through the door, right? Get yourself through the door with whatever that thing is. I'm kind of losing the frame of reference to what we were talking about, but it pertains. Maybe everyone else remembers, but it's like, there's something to get you through the door. I guess that initial hit of inspiration, that initial idea, that initial vision, and then you've got to let it go and pay attention to where that thing will take you next, because it's not like it's a static thing. I think that's maybe a mistaken idea that we have, is that inspiration is this static thing. You have it and it's there and it's this solid thing and it's not moving. And it's like, no, that's just where it is at this stage. And you take it where it's at this stage, but then you've got to allow yourself to follow it into the next stages that it wants to go to.
I think there is a kind of a systematic way to create art and to do things in life. There is a systematic way to do it. And watch a movie. Some movies are, honestly, I have to say, they're super hard for me to watch, because I can see them running the system and I can see the tool they're using. And it's like, could you just let it go? Could you just let it go? And like, let's just see where this goes, and it's like, you're playing your beats, like you're playing it all out, like the way this scene was supposed to be written. And you see this with a lot of like mainstream movies. And like, I guess for a young audience, to some degree, those movies, they don't care that much because they don't have a lot of experience with them, but maybe. But when you have when you open it up, I'm trying to think of a good example. A movie that I haven't actually finished, but like, I think it's like Ford versus Ferrari or something like that, with Matt Damon and
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. No spoilers.
Sure, I won't give you any spoilers. But this story, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but to me, this movie it's not bad. It has a mix of some things where they kind of let it live. They kind of let it have a little bit of life. I think maybe you got some really good actors. You probably have some good things put together. But then it has these moments where you're like, that's by the fucking paint by numbers. Like, it's just a paint by numbers moment or scene like that. It's so predictable. Like, and you're just like, I'm watching it. I'm like, oh my God, can I even watch this movie? Because when I see that stuff, it's just like, there's nothing, that's not inspired. It's pedestrian. It's just absolutely a passive example of storytelling. And so, but there's other moments where it's like, I actually think that like there's a moment, and I'm not going to ruin where it is in the movie, but like there's a moment where, and I think it was a writing thing. For example, there's probably many, many more, but I'm just this one that really stood out to me, where it was like the writer knew that the scene had to start here and end here, and that they were going to make it start one way and end differently. And you could tell that that this scene was designed to do that. So they had a goal, right? But the way they got there and the monologue that they wrote in it and the transitional way in which it was done and kind of the turn, I was like, that was nice. Felt like the monologue was very like inspired and kind of taking me through something. And and Matt Damon, who was in the scene, to me, he kind of gave the words of the writing like a certain kind of life. Like I could see him finding his moments, like in the moments as he was saying what he was saying. And it was kind of, it's a pretty commercial movie in a lot of ways, but then you have these beautiful moments and they're kind of inspired. And you're like, I remember after I saw that part, I was like, oh, that was good. That was really cool. And it's kind of what made me keep watching the movie, because I was like, even though it had what I would call a somewhat predictable, systematic, we need to get this information out, scene needs to do this. I could see all the things that were needed to be done. The acting and the writing found a little bit of inspiration, enough to make it kind of have a freshness to it, something that made you kind of go, as much as I knew what was going on as a writer, and I probably know too much, like I'm a unique viewer that way, like I break things down way too much, but in spite of me being able to do that, to kind of not really know exactly how it would play out, kept me in it, kept it alive for me. And I feel like life is so boring, not just art. Art is boring when you do this, but life is boring when you just know everything. Like I wake up, I go to work, I come home from work, I'm going to do this at work, and then I'm going to see whoever, and I'm going to do this at home, and I'm going to eat a meal, and I'm a blah, 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 and boring. But if there's a moment of inspiration, a way in which things, even if it happens kind of the same way, but it plays out with a little bit of life, a little bit of unknown, that's what kind of makes things special. It's kind of what makes it alive. And so I think like something I'm kind of finding out as we're going through this conversation, the more I think about it, is like, you might kind of know what you're doing and you might even get the result you're going for, but the way you get it, the way you journey through it, there's an aliveness in it. And I think like, when I did your acting school, for example, it was kind of like that for me in some ways too. It was kind of like, although I couldn't say I knew how it was going to resolve. I couldn't say that, but I could say that the way we got there was like, I still remember certain moments, like, because it was like, that was totally unique in that moment, because the way it's set up and the way you do it, it's like, if you do it the way you're suggesting and the way you kind of facilitate it, it's all new. It's all just happening. And you're kind of like, it's weird because you're like, you could be in it. And like, I'm talking about it in a really like lovely way right now, but you can be in it and you can be like, I fucking hate that I'm in this moment. But, but that's acting, that's kind of the life of it, right? It's like, you can kind of, by letting the moment be new and inspired, you can find out something about yourself that you didn't know before you started. And I think when I refer to the scene, and I think when I refer to this whole portion of what I'm trying to talk about, it's that thing. It's like, you already knew how it would start and you already knew how it'd end, but you didn't know what you would discover in between. And that's the
Mhm.
thing. That's kind of the inspirational part. I think that I'm kind of like looking at right now. It's what makes it all worth it because, and that's kind of what makes also it worth it. Even if you know you're going to lose, you almost make your peace with that because you're like, but what's it going to be like in the game of this, and that's the
Mhm.
life, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things with, like, when you're acting, there's an element of lightness to it because, you're playing,
Yeah.
right? Whereas sort of in our day-to-day lives, it takes on a greater sense of seriousness to it all, which, maybe there's a reason for it, but maybe there isn't as good a reason as you think for it.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, as you were talking about, going about your day to day, you go to your job, you come back, it's all very expected. What's funny is that very often we get upset when the unexpected happens, but at the same time, it's like, I think that there's a deep part of us that just, it loves that unexpected, and sometimes it's dramatic. Sometimes, there's like people who are addicted to drama, like
Mm.
most of us have someone who's like that in our lives. Just like, why are these people so addicted to drama? I think that's kind of a manifestation sometimes of kind of creativity not being given a place, when we're not pursuing, we're not seeking, to do something, again, even if you don't know exactly what that is, but like, if you're looking to then I think that it shows up in a different way. But I think that that's one of the reasons why people love drama and people are kind of addicted to drama, is because it's something different.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that throws a little bit of a curveball into the monotony of day-to-day life, right? And so we crave that unexpected. We crave that inspiration, and maybe it's not, I wouldn't advise, stirring up drama as being a great way to to get inspiration. I don't think that's necessarily the healthiest nor the most, because you've got to always stir up a new drama. That's kind of like that's kind of a thing, and there's I think a lot of consequences to that that I'm sure we can all take a guess at. But I mean, I think that this is, really all to say that, like, inspiration can come in so many different forms. It can come in those beautiful walks in nature, that we intentionally put ourselves into that position. And it can come out of unexpected sort of dramas that arise as well. I think that happens. We don't necessarily go out looking for it, but sometimes we find ourselves in a drama that we didn't necessarily want. But I think that there's still something that we can find in that. I think that there's still inspiration to be found in it. Why not? And to ask the question, it's like, well, what could the inspiration be behind all of this? This uncomfortable situation. Where is there inspiration in this for me? And what is that? What is it inspiring me to do? Right? Because I think that any uncomfortable situation that we're in, any painful situation that we're in a weird way, it's inspiring us to do something.
Yeah.
It's inspiring us just like, yeah, take action, do something, move, get out of this current place. You're stagnant sometimes. I think that that's a lot of times when shit like that happens, like when drama kind of arises in our lives, it's kind of like, the universe or inspiration saying that you've gone stagnant. So now a change is being put upon you.
Mm-hmm.
So you move.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of brings it on to another thing, is like not being too comfortable, and not like comfort is not, it's okay temporarily, but it's not really what you want. And I think when you get too comfortable for too long, life becomes painful. And the drama seeker is someone who's too comfortable, and they're actually so comfortable they're in pain and they're looking for trauma. And that's, actually it's all interesting because it's all kind of circling back to a point that I kind of stumbled across earlier. I guess we stumbled across it, but it was something that I just noticed was like, you gotta either want something or you gotta want to get away from something. And then to further that point, it seems like an outlet, but a healthy outlet, you know. It's kind of interesting because there's this relationship for me to all of this with feeling, and it's this want to feel joy and this want to not be in pain, and but not comfort, because comfort's a trap. Like comfort it's a temporary solution. It's a band-aid solution. It's not really what we're after. But I think sometimes comfort just seems so much better than pain that we settle for it. But that's not really what you want. What you really want is to be out of pain. You don't want comfort. You want to be out of pain. And comfort is a way that's trying to get you out of pain, but comfort isn't what you want. And you want joy, you want excitement, you want exuberance, you want and I don't think that I'm just speaking for myself, because with all the people I've worked with and all the people I've ever talked to in all of my life, everybody is after, when you really get down to it, they're not after comfort. I just think it's such a bullshit idea. They're after, they want excitement. They want to live. They want that invigorated feeling. And inspiration is kind of that spark almost that helps you to like open up that. And also, it helps you make something out of a really painful situation, because sometimes you can be in a really shit situation, but inspiration can give you a certain sense of possibility that didn't exist before. And it's a new door. It's a new pathway you can walk through or walk down. Yeah. So it's, kind of what I'm starting to realize as we're going through this whole talk is like that feeling that you're after, because I mean, let's be honest, that's what it really is. I mean, that's what we're all after. We're feeling human beings. That feeling that you're after, it's in the unknown, and that's the thing you're scared of. And you got to turn that thing you're scared of into the thing that is exciting. You got to change your relationship to it, because if it is scary to you, comfort is the option. And my one tenet, if I have one tenet in life, and if I could pass on one wisdom to the rest of the whole world, and the whole world could live by this one tenet, I would beg and implore people, make no decision out of fear. That would be it. That if I could leave one thing in the world, I would say just no decision, not a single decision, make it out of fear. Like do everything in your power to make decisions out of anything but fear, because fear is worse than death. It's just it's the worst thing you can make decisions from. It's fine to feel fear, but don't make decisions from fear. And I think that inspiration is kind of the thing that helps you look at fear in the eye and go, fuck it. I'm walking towards you. And very closely related to that is the unknown. Don't make a decision because it's unknown. You could say it is the same tenet, right? Like want to know, implore yourself to know, it's better to know. Yeah. And I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like inspiration has a lot to do with that. It's like inspiration and fear are very like, they're counter, they're not, you might be scared, but it's in spite of fear that you go with inspiration, Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm inspired to do it. So I'm going to do it anyway. Fear is the thing that stops you from doing the thing you're inspired of.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother. I give an amen to that one. I give an amen to that one.
Soapbox.
That's going. It's. I've got some ideas of some stuff that's going on my chalkboard after this conversation.
Hey, nice.
For anybody who's like, my chalkboard is just some words of wisdom, reminders
Who writes with
for
chalk, Evan?
What's chalk?
What are you, a 1960s teacher?
Hey man, chalkboards are retro.
What are you drinking there, retro?
Oh man, I've been enjoying a very nice little brew from Parallel 49. I feel like this is good because the last one I had from Parallel 49 was what the hell did I have? It was terrible. Like for me, it was really awful.
Someone out there loves it though.
It was some sort of like I don't know. It was a sour of some kind that wasn't labeled as a sour, and I couldn't finish it. But this one is called the Cobra Clutch.
Nice.
And it's a double IPA. And I said, like, before we started recording, Brandon, you heard me. I was just like, oh no, this could be trouble, because I took a sip and I was like, this is really good. And this is really smooth and easy to drink. It's 8% alcohol. So I'm actually doing pretty well. I was really nervous. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be slurring my words by the end of this podcast. But I think that I've been keeping my vocabulary and articulations and able to form ideas and sentences relatively okay. But now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I'm just screwing things up. So it's great. I'm enjoying the hell out of this one. I would definitely drink this one again. So,
nice.
And that's not a paid advertisement or anything. We're not sponsored by Parallel 49. That's just my own. It's good.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about an honest review, man. Yeah, it's good that you got to have a couple different beers from them recently, because it is nice. You know, a lot of these breweries, like, they try different things, and not every beer is always going to be the type of beer you want. I find sours in general I don't like any of them. I had one on the weekend. It was actually good, which was a rare experience for me. Anyhow, let me just talk about this beer. This one is from How Sound Brewing, and it's called Super Jupiter. It's a mango ISA. And yeah, it's tasty, man. It's as you can see, it's a very almost kind of thick looking beer. Or maybe there's a better term for that. Hazy. It's very hazy. Yeah.
I think you can say thick. You're allowed to say thick.
Sure. It's a thick beer. No, it's good. It's tasty. It's not too hoppy. The mango is not too strong either, which is nice. So it's kind of flavorful, a little hoppy. Yeah, it's nice. It's kind of like having a wheat beer and an IPA, a mild IPA with a little bit of mango thrown in. That's kind of how I'd put it. So it's good. Well done. Well done, House Sound. You guys did me well today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this one up.
Let's try.
Yeah. That's all we ever do, Brandon, is we try. It's all a person could do. I'm just going to kind of pick up where I just sort of left off before the beer break here, talking about the chalkboard, you know, because I'm like, yeah, this is sort of my takeaway. This is what is going to drive me to just take a small action. My inspiration from this conversation about inspiration. And it's interesting because it's not necessarily something new, which I think is fitting with this conversation. But, you know, there's Joseph Campbell, you know, famously used to tell his students and everyone, follow your bliss. And I've heard someone else sort of re-articulate it as like, well, follow your excitement, you know, that they're kind of interchangeable. And I've heard that so many times before, and it's like, yeah. Well, I feel like I'm at a place where I'm like, you know what? I am going to put my money where my mouth is a bit more starting now with that statement. And I'm going to write it up on my chalkboard. I'm going to say I'm going to put both of those things up on there. Put your money where your mouth is. What are you excited about today? Just as a thing to tell me, like, because that excitement, that is that inspiration. You know, that's following that inspiration. That's not making decisions out of fear, right? And start really living my life that way, you know, because it's a nice idea. It's a nice thing that for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of others, you say stuff like that to yourself and you go, yeah, totally. I'm going to do that. And then, you know, when push comes to shove, you know, we fall back into patterns of making fearful decisions, right? And I'm not today, Satan. Not today. Or at least I'm going to fight a little bit harder, I feel, after this conversation, to be like, nope, follow your excitement. What are you excited about today? And do that thing. Do the thing that you're excited about doing in your life. You know, we have to do the things that we're excited about doing. Otherwise, what's the point, Brandon? What's the point? So that's what I'm leaving things off with.
Well, I agree with that. I really do agree with that. I think you pointed out one of the most important things is that it goes back to that point. You know, it's like these decisions out of fear, they're no way to live, man. They just are no way to live. And I think that if you weren't focused on the consequences of whatever you think is going to happen, whatever you think is going to go wrong, however you think you're going to mess up, if none of that matters, you know, if you decidedly to say like it doesn't matter, I think that you open yourself up to a whole new bunch of potential and a whole bunch of unknowns that were off, like they were just off bounds. You couldn't do them before. So yeah, okay. Here's the other thing that I'm going to say, and we didn't really talk about this on the talk, but it was one of those things that I've been kind of thinking about because it's something that I've been making my peace with as I go through my little journey of life, is that sometimes you're in a situation that it's not necessarily the way you want it to be. And maybe you want to change it, you know, and I know for myself, like I've done a lot of things over the last like few years where I've done a lot of really cool changes in my life. And I went, okay, well, I'm here and I want to be here, and I'm here and I want to be here. And I've been able to like make some things happen. But there are certain times and there's certain things where I've experienced where it's been like, I just have to like be in this right now, whatever this is. And I think the reluctance to accept that makes it so much harder. So my advice, if I can leave people with anything like taking inspiration, maybe in a different way, is that maybe you're not in the place you want to be in. Maybe you don't see the path to where you want to go yet. But like, maybe try to look at where you're at as an opportunity to see something or learn something, evolve in some way, that there can be an inspiration in that. Something that I have found in these last few years of my life, sounds like I'm going to die. I hope not, but you know what? It could happen. But here's the thing. But these last few years of my life, what I've really discovered is like, I've discovered things like what it means to really like have love. Like not like my understanding of love was so childish before. Also, you know, what it means to like actually value things, to go for what I want, to, you know, and there's been kind of I've been working through a lot of stuff, you know, and I mean, Evan, you know my story, you know some of the things that I haven't shared publicly, but like I had to work through a lot of shit to like make sense of some stuff, you know, and I have to try to look at all of this stuff as like a kind of a gift. You know, I never expected to ever have to confront these things, or they weren't even on my radar possibilities that I would have to live through and make peace with and try to understand. Um, but I can tell you that I have. I've made a lot of peace with this stuff. I've worked on a lot. I've grown tremendously as a person because of some of these things. And they made me someone who I never thought I could be or would be. And I guess my thing is like there's an inspiration in that, because maybe the person that I'm becoming, maybe the person I've already become and am becoming through this, maybe there's something that that person, some corner that that person can get out of, that the person I was before, the person who saw the world the way I did before, could have never gotten out of. And I think there's a certain kind of like when you're in the shit, when you're in something and you're working through it and you're trying to figure it out and you're wrestling with it, maybe the inspiration is you.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode.
You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.